Well, welcome to Outside the Games. My name is Kevin Minton, your host. We thank you so much for joining us. We have a coach with us here, Coach Phil Longo. He is the offensive coordinator, QB coach for North Carolina, the Tarheel football program. Thank you very much, Coach, for joining us.
I appreciate the invite. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, yes. Hey, so Coach, what we do is we talk a little bit about, family, life, and the sport itself in which you coach. To kind of start us off, though, we're talking about family, and I know family means a lot to you. I've seen your daughters. I've seen some pictures on social media of your wife and your family. But outside of that, your parents and how they brought you up. What does family mean to you? Could you define that for us?
Well, I think family is a word that's tossed around in the football world, quite often. It's from a professional standpoint, very, very challenging for anybody who is entertaining the idea of seriously pursuing a college football coaching career. I think you need to do your research and you want to really talk to a number of different people that are in the business, because on the flip side of things in life, if you're a family person, it's very, very difficult to juggle the two. And I'm not saying you can't do it successfully. I think my wife Tanya and I are trying to do that every day. Mac Brown on the other side of that equation certainly helps our chances of succeeding with regards to winning on the field and being a good dad at home. And that's not an easy thing to accomplish. Many people, friends in the business that I know, really struggle with where the line is with regards to the commitment that they make to the job and to their family. I know that there are certain jobs out there that I simply could not do, not from a football knowledge standpoint or a leadership standpoint, but I'm not willing to, and I will grind and work as hard as anybody, and I'm going to work as hard as we need to be prepared for every game on Saturday. But it will never be at the expense of my family. And then on the other end of it, I think it really takes a very unique matching up of having a great boss and a great wife. And I'm very fortunate because my wife Tanya coached Division I women's basketball, NCAA basketball for 15 years. So I met her while the two of us were grinding, and working hard and putting long hours in the office. That's how I met her, in the athletic building as we worked together for the same university. So having a wife that no longer does what I do, but understands that if I'm not home at 8 p.m. and I show up at 1 a.m., her first question is, how did recruiting go? I mean, she completely gets it, and she understands what my job entails. And so I've been very fortunate to have somebody that understands the sacrifice that you make in this profession. And then on the flip side, I want to make sure that I get my job done at a high level, but that I get home enough and in time to raise my kids and be a good husband. So on the other end of that, to be working for a guy like Mac Brown, who one is going to do it the right way. He's not going to cheat. Two, he's going to do it the right way with regards to treating people the right way. Three, and I've worked for a lot of great people, so this is not it's not a negative connotation on anybody in the past that I've worked with. I've been a few places, I think, where we threw that word family around a lot. That's not really what the culture was like. And I've been at some tremendous places where family was a huge priority, never more than here in North Carolina. So there's been some really, really good places. And I've worked for some really, really good people who allowed us to have our family on campus and around the office and involved, not necessarily the inner workings of the team, but they were at practice and in the office and maybe around meetings and those types of things. And that's rare. That's not the norm. But here in North Carolina, that is an everyday occurrence. My 9-year-old is at most practices. She helps the managers or the trainers or,
Oh, wow.
whoever she can, to be able to turn around in a drill and see my 9-year-old as I'm, coaching Sam Howell, our quarterback, is an awesome experience. And so I've been very fortunate to have the best of both worlds. And I'm extremely appreciative of, the atmosphere that I get to coach in every day.
It's interesting you talk about that because I think family is such a huge piece to what you do, and,
Sure.
and really defining it that way, because everybody can have a certain definition of it. But for you as a coach, how has it been to like grab I mean, because the resume for you with what places you've coached at, does Coach Longo, does he look at every spot he has been as an experience, and he grasps a little piece of that journey to where he's at today as the North Carolina Tar Heels football coach?
Well, I think anybody that, and I still have a long way to go on this journey, so I'm enjoying it. Um, on the personal side, I've got two, one, or actually a little over one, two 14-month-old twins. So I've got, I've got quite a job to do still at home, along with my 9 and my 6-year-old. And then, from a football standpoint, I'm going to be doing this another 16, 18 years. So, from a journey standpoint, I'm kind of about halfway. I'm at halftime right now.
Yeah.
And I think anybody at this point in the game that uh, doesn't look back at their experiences and appreciate the things that they've been through, and how they've affected in a positive way where they are at that point. For me personally, to look back at when I coached in high school, to look back at when I coached at Division III and Division II and at the FCS and at the junior college level. I never really realized it, but somebody said in a press conference this past fall, you've coached at every single level of football. And I really had never really kind of actually realized that. I knew it, but I never really said, hey, you know what? I've been at every single level. I've never really looked at the next job. I just feel like the minute you do that, you start cheating the place that you're at. So the old adage is you make the place you're at the place to be, and that's always been my focus. I think that gives you the best opportunity to do the best possible job you can do where you are. And if somebody comes calling and it's a good opportunity for you and to develop yourself and your family, then you entertain it, and if not, you stay and you keep working. And we just happen to have wound up in North Carolina now with a human being like Mac Brown and his wife Sally. Um, this is a really, really difficult place to ever want to leave. When you walk around North Carolina's campus, you meet so many people that have been here 20, 30 years, and you realize this is not really a stepping stone place. This is a destination, university. And so we're loving Chapel Hill. We're loving the Tar Heels, and all is good right now in the Longo household.
And talking about that, I appreciate your thought on that, because what North Carolina has meant for you as a home. I mean, because you were at Ole Miss for some time. What has that experience at Ole Miss been like? So that way, did it make you feel a better coach to handle certain situations because you've seen them on that level in the SEC? Now you go to the ACC. So how has that been for you as far as the experience you've had at Ole Miss, then take it to North Carolina?
Ole Miss was just a different experience. I was hired at Ole Miss by Hugh Freeze. I worked with a lot of really good people there. There were some tremendous people in Oxford that were absolutely wonderful to my wife and my family while we were there. We had a great experience there. We enjoyed calling the offense and scoring points and trying to help that program accomplish what it needed to at that time. And that experience provided this opportunity with Coach Brown. So it's cumulative as your life goes on. You take the experiences that you have from just about every place, and as bad as any one experience may be, there's always something good you can take from it. And I didn't come on today to preach to anybody, but this scenario, this situation that we're in right now is a perfect example. Um, there are a lot of people that we pray for every day that are struggling with the coronavirus. There are people who have other struggles financially. There are businesses that are struggling financially, and it's affecting the world and the country in a lot of different ways. Some we could foresee, and some were completely unexpected. And and so we do what we can to help those that we can help every day. My wife and I, whether it be financially or with our time or our efforts. But outside of that, what they're asking us to do is to stay home and stay safe and not contract anything and or give something to somebody else so that we can end this problem. So that's what my family and I are doing right now, just like most of you, hopefully all of you. And I guess the example that I'm alluding to is we're going to make the best of the situation. Right now, I have more time to spend on football than I've ever had. I have more time at the same time to spend with my kids. So I'm giving my kids more time every day than I did before. And I'm still working on football more than I did before. And with that, I still have more time for my wife, and I still have more time to work out, and I still have more time to recruit because we're not transitioning to work every day. All of the stuff that takes up time that's not necessarily efficient during the days we're not dealing with right now. So the minute I get up and I get my workout done, I'm already at the office, so we can go to work,
Mm.
and that's been a huge plus. The thing that's really really difficult right now for me and my wife is knowing that there are others out there that are not as fortunate, and then also missing our players. We miss seeing our staff, the guys that I work with every day, and I miss seeing the players that I love so much on a daily basis. And that's probably the toughest thing outside of actually getting the virus that we're handling and dealing with right now.
Throughout these, because I see a lot of decisions that you've had to make and some things that you've had to make with your family. Coach Longo, can you kind of go into detail about how your parents brought you up to have, because part of it is that, there's values and things about how to go about certain things and what work hard, put in the work, dedicate yourself, be focused. There's a lot of different things that we learn, as we were once a kid, to where our parents trained us to some extent. What things did they teach you to make you, a better person and a better husband and coach and so on and so forth?
It's not often that I get an opportunity to talk about my upbringing or my parents, but um, I would say that I'll enjoy this next minute or two to credit them with just about everything that I do, because really I think the person that I am today, outside of a few other people that had a major impact on me and who I am and how I think and what I do. Nothing has been more impactful and more drastic, obviously, than the upbringing that you have with your parents. And again, I'm thankful every day. And as you get older, you become really more appreciative of what you've had in your life. I had two parents my entire upbringing, and with a lot of my players, that's not the case. Some of them have two parents, but one of them has a major issue. Some of them only have one. Some of them don't have either one. Some of them have two, and they're not great people, and they're struggling with things. And so there are a lot of people that maybe weren't as fortunate as I think I was growing up. My brother and I grew up feeling like we were rich. We just felt like we were taught what it was to earn a dollar. We were taught what it was to work hard. We were taught what it was to respect adults and females. And I think so we were brought up correctly, morally and ethically. Uh, but in our minds, my brother and my own, in our minds, we really felt like looking back after high school and college that mom and dad gave us just about everything that we ever wanted. And both of them worked two jobs at times. We weren't even remotely close to being rich. We didn't have very much money at all. We lived kind of a lower middle class life. Uh, Grew up very little tragedy in our family, and so we were very fortunate to just have that, that American upbringing that you all dream of. And so we feel fortunate, and we both got good college education. And I think we respect people. I think having integrity is important to us. Having a great work ethic is important to us. And I think both my brother and I would attribute all that to the way that we were raised by my mom and my dad.
So huge that it plays such a huge integral part of what you're doing today. So, that's been impressive. Tell me what it is to be a offensive coordinator / quarterback coach. You being a quarterback in college, playing the position, understanding offenses, seeing different offenses, because I mean, there's a bunch of offenses: run and shoot, pistol, spread, wing T, wishbone. I mean, there's been past offenses. The blur offense we've heard, Coach Chip Kelly. So what has it been to be an offensive coordinator / offensive coordinator and / QB coach? What is that position like in learning offenses, getting them better, learning those different wrinkles?
Well, it's interesting because you asked me earlier about, or mentioned, the different stops that we've had along the way, my family and I, and it's been at a lot of different levels. But truthfully, the offense, since 96 or 97, I started coaching in 91. I had an internship at the Philadelphia Eagles, thanks to the assistance of my former college coach, John Bunting, who played at North Carolina. Small world, because here I am now in Tarheel country, and thrilled to visit with him every time he comes to campus. He's probably one of those people that I was alluding to when I mentioned others outside of my pop and my mom that were huge influences and were impactful. John Bunting was one of those people. And so he got me started when I finished my college coaching career. And I played small Division III football with no scholarships. And, you play because you loved it. And it was just the only other opportunity that you have after high school to continue competing. And then he gave me an opportunity at the pro level, even though it was as an intern, to get my foot in the door in the coaching profession. And so I was never a grad assistant. A lot of people refer to the GA job as that grunt job that you kind of learn the ropes and you pay your dues, and it's not a glorious job in any way, shape, or form. I actually never did that job, but man, it wasn't any different as a grunt intern for the Philadelphia Eagles either. So you go from the Buddy Ryan era to the Rich Kotite era. Both programs run very, very differently, but those were some great experiences. And then from there, obviously, we did a whole bunch of different things. But the offense, since I met Mike Leach in 96 or 97 at the University of Kentucky, really, that was the year I made the decision that, hey, this is what I believe in. This is what I think makes sense. It's what I thought was the best philosophy offensively out there. And I adopted that philosophy. And we've been running an offense that has been driven by that philosophy ever since. And it really hasn't changed much. It's kind of, I often use the analogy of a race car. You have a Ferrari, and it can perform, and it's fast. And every year, though, for us, in between every season, that's our pit stop. That's our opportunity to pull the offense in and put better tires on, or juice up the engine or whatever. You're making your individual little improvements. You're taking the weak links and you're making them better, and it makes the overall total package better. And, I had a friend of mine in the SEC who was a coordinator at the time. We were getting ready to play him, and he called and he just said, I really envy you. And I said, you envy me? We're 4-2. You're 6-0. You're ranked right now. what do you envy about my position? And he just said, well, in the last 19 years, I've been in 5 different offenses. And for me, the last 19, 20, 21 years, I've been in the same system, which is really an advantage because I, we'll study other systems and we'll look at what somebody might be doing that potentially is better than the way, if there's a route they're running better, a technique that's better than what we're doing, a different depth, a different approach, a different cadence, what have you. Just part of research and development with your offense. But the key system with the philosophy behind it has been the same for 20 something years now. And I do believe what my buddy told me that's a major advantage. And so we're just kind of looking at souping up the Ferrari a little bit more each year.
Adding parts. I see that. Got to. Because the game changes so quick, doesn't it? I mean, you got to understand that there's defensive coordinators studying offenses, trying to figure out how can we slow down. I was not really stop, but slow down the production of yards, points, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, I think I probably became a better coach the year that I decided to start studying more defensive coordinators and defenses and what they're doing as opposed to studying other offenses. You do the offensive research, but I think we spend a lot of time in the off season right now trying to identify what the defenses and coaches are trying to identify. What's new that's out there defensively that can help us attack offenses next year? Well, we're looking at the same stuff. I want to know what pressures, what coverages, what different things they're employing defensively that are going to give us problems next year. And so when you can get those identified and you can study those, you can more effectively prepare to attack them when you get to the fall. And so it really, the shift from studying offenses to studying defenses was a huge decision without me realizing how impactful it was going to be with regards to us being more well prepared every year, for the upcoming season.
The outlook has been, you played 11 years or didn't play, excuse me, you coached 11 years at Ole Miss in the SEC. And there's this thought process, it goes from the BCS, when you look at the BCS and just the power that the SEC has had in the BCS. And then now you're looking at the college football playoff for the 4 teams that they're down to. We've seen a changing of the guard from a standpoint of, SEC teams like Alabama, Nick Saban, what he's doing there. But now we're starting to see teams like the ACC start to show up, with teams of Clemson and what you guys are doing in North Carolina. It's really made an impact as far as what, you got fans, you have other people that watch the game or they study it, they look at it, and they just say SEC is just too powerful. Well, we're starting to see a change of the guard. Is that true?
It's hard to say. I think you have. I coached in the SEC. I coached in the ACC. Both conferences have a different character. They have a different culture. A little bit different feel from a coaching standpoint. You got 1 or 2 fronts that tend to dominate where defenses are living in the SEC. That's a little bit different than where they're living in the ACC. Coverages differ. But things also differ from team to team. So, it really all starts with recruiting. It really does, because you have to have a talent base before anything else really can have an effect. I think you can have great talent, and if you don't have a really good head coach, great leadership, and you do a really good job with them from an X's and O's standpoint, you can screw up good talent. We don't have that problem in North Carolina. I can't think of a better boss than the one that we have right now. He's the only active coach that I know of right now with a Heisman Trophy winner, a national championship ring, and a ring for being in the College Football Hall of Fame. And it's really an honor every day to go to work and work for him. And there's a different feel at work for Mac, because I can just speak for me personally, but you really just, I work hard. I'm motivated, self-motivated. I probably put more pressure on myself than fans or the media or our boss can. But you really don't feel that when you're in North Carolina. I feel more of a sense of disappointment if we don't play well, because I want to see Mac Brown happy after games. And when he's happy, the whole program's happy. So that's the goal. And I feel more of a sense of, hey, we let him down when we don't win a game, as opposed to the pressure of not doing your job. And it's really, to me, that's a much more productive atmosphere to be in. And then I think outside of recruiting, you've got to have a great staff that can implement a good attack regardless of what side you're on. Football kids aren't having fun playing the game nowadays. You're not going to get the most out of them. And if they don't believe you care about them above and beyond football, then they're only going to give you so much. And it takes more, I think, to make coaching football personal. And it's not that they're wrong. I really have a hard time agreeing with those in our business that say, hey, look, this is a business. It's cutthroat, and you've got to make tough decisions, and that's true. But I don't think having a personal relationship with your players is a detriment. And I firmly believe the more real time you put in with your guys, the more you have a chance of getting the most out of them, both on and off the field. And that's the biggest reason that we live in this philosophy offensively, because it's simple. It's easier to teach. It takes less time. And when it takes less time, we can make a greater investment in developing the relationship with our players that I think you have to have.
And I've noticed that, the time that I've seen you at North Carolina, and I think North Carolina has done this from a social media standpoint, is just try to get out there and really put a lot of information out there on social media that, hey, we have a game today, it's game day. A lot of teams are doing that, but there's something special about what North Carolina is doing from a marketing standpoint in trying to market that, and then actually get, you're right, talent, recruiting, and everything comes into play, getting high school players to take an interest into North Carolina. And I think the other piece of it too is not letting Mac Brown down, but rather seeing him dance more often, I think is something that, people in social media have just, to see Mac Brown be that person. Because I think, Mac Brown at Texas and what we've seen in the past, very serious, but very now just very playful and very, for his team, his players, and a player's coach, but expecting so much, but having fun with his team.
I think I can safely say this without coach not, with coach agreeing. Mac Brown doesn't want you to see Mac Brown dancing more. Of course, he will do whatever he has to do to win a football game within the legal bounds. But and I know for a fact Sally Brown doesn't want you to see more dancing from Mac Brown. But if that's what's going to promote the culture that we have right now, he'll do whatever we got to do. So I think it is fun going to work. It's fun playing there. Winning is always fun, but I think the way we're doing it, it's going to be a wild ride in North Carolina for quite some time.
Would you say, in this statement, I want to see what your thoughts would be. You talk about leadership, and leadership is something that, when things are going well, boy, being a leader, you're getting wins, things are going well, but you also find out, about a leader when it comes to when things don't go well. And you could say that for a player, a coach, a teacher, whoever. Is that kind of a true statement, that leadership is just, it's the good and bad, but it's just how you, make it better and try to work on it?
Yeah, I probably agree with what you said 100%, because this situation alone, our staff, we've had discussions about it. It's been very revealing. And, every day when we watch every kid in our program validate and our feelings about them by doing what it is they need to do to maintain being fully prepared for the season this fall, it makes us feel like we had them pegged the right way, because based on what we've seen and their behavior and their work ethic and their commitment and their drive, we don't necessarily have to be looking in practice at a drill for them to be working their hardest. We don't have to be with them when they're away from us to know that they're fully committed and doing the things they need to do. And I probably could not say that about every group I've ever been a part of. We've had more immature groups. We've had less talented groups. We've had more troublesome groups. But and we've had some great units. But this particular group right now is very trustworthy. This situation with what's going on in the world has put a lot of these players in a position where if they were faking it or they weren't fully committed, they were going to be revealed. And right now, it's been a very positive sense throughout our entire program, because players are seeing other players, and they're seeing coaches, and coaches are seeing other coaches and their players do all of the things that they need to do. And so I fully, wholeheartedly believe that the North Carolina football program has not lost a beat, not lost a step since this thing started, with the exception of the physicality aspect in the spring ball.
Let's take a look at back in, last year. You got to the bowl game, Military Bowl versus Temple, 55-13 with the victory. Tell me what this, the season meant to you last year, and then to the point of winning the Military Bowl, your coaching staff, your players, and seeing their growth during that process.
Well, what's really been probably the most enjoyable process for me personally what was to sit down in Mac Brown's first meeting ever with the staff at North Carolina. And, he gives you an agenda, and he says, this is what's important today, and this is what we need to work on. And then, when we leave that meeting, that's what we're doing. We're all heading out to go knock down the agenda that he gave us. And then you come back the next day and we do it again. And that's not any different than a lot of places that are organized and are focused on being successful, whether it's football or a business, a different venue. But he has seen just about every situation. He's experienced just about every problem. I think this issue that's going on right now is the first time he's seen something new that he hasn't seen before in a long time. And I can't speak for him. I'm just speaking from listening to him so much that for him just to say, well, look, this is his whole approach. He says, here's the blueprint. This is how we solve this problem. Does anybody here have a better idea? And if they do, he takes it, and then we make the whole product better, just like we do the offense. And if somebody doesn't have a better solution, well, he's got one. It's not like in our meetings, we don't have to sit around and figure out how to solve a problem. I've always felt like here's how we're going to solve it, and this works unless somebody has something better. So you just go into the meeting knowing if there's an obstacle, we've got a way of getting over it or going through it, to get to the next step for our program. And so every aspect of the program, from Jeremy Sharp and media and PR to recruiting with Billy High and his team, to Coach Hess, Brian Hess, who I think is one of the best ranked coaches in the country by far, and the physical and explosive development of our team and his whole staff, to our coaching staff, who, and I just try to get out of their way and let them go do their thing. And they have, this staff has done a phenomenal job of developing each positional room. And I think the best indication of that is the steady week-to-week improvement that our Tarheel program showed this year. And, the last 3-4 games of the year were some of our best from a mental and a physical standpoint and a continuity standpoint, because we improved a little bit every single week. And that's the indication of great leadership, and it's an indication of a phenomenal commitment by staff and team to get better every week. And I think we were 13 weeks better at Temple than we were when we started on opening day when we beat South Carolina.
What is it because you're losing, this is the thing about it, is that within a team, you get people that graduate, they move on to the next level. If it's life, if it's work, if it's, the NFL or whatever options they have, being able to play in the next level, or, just, start working in a business. What is it about the fact for next year, because always that next up mentality of players, especially from if you're a freshman going to a sophomore going to a junior, what does that look like for next year as far as what team you have? And I mean, obviously the goals have been set. I'm sure from a coaching staff, looking at, right now we're dealing with COVID-19, but you have to kind of think ahead. A good coach forecasts or tries to stay ahead of the game to kind of like implement something. And, maybe talk a little bit about, what that offensive defense looks like, and what could you see as far as improvements from last year to a better season coming up?
Well, I think the improvement over the long haul comes from planning for the long haul, and offensively, part of the process for us that helps us improve is the fact that we don't change. So coming into spring ball this year was going to be drastically different than the beginning of spring ball last year. Last year it was football 101. Let's just teach them the system. Let's get them sound from a technique standpoint. And let's get enough reps so that there's some continuity and some timing. And then a huge part of what we do is we've got to get our players to a point where they're playing instinctively. I mean, playing without thinking, playing with so much confidence because they've done something 1,000 times, and they have tremendous confidence in it. And that's another reason why we're not going to be overly complicated. We can be very multiple in a game. We can present multiple pictures and run multiple schemes, but we're not going to teach multiple things to our guys in an effort to get that accomplished. We want to be as simple as we can on our side and present, as multiple a package as we can to the defense. And so from an offensive world, that's the world that we live in. And it provides, particularly for quarterbacks and running backs and receivers, the skill kids, a lot more freedom. We don't have a playbook because we don't want to outline what a post looks like, because that post will look like 6 or 7 different things in 10 reps. And so to draw one way and have our ex receiver think that this is what a post looks like, I don't want him to have that picture. I want him to take the angle on a post route, if that's the example we're using, that's going to get him in the grass. And I want a quarterback to have enough flexibility to be able to attack a defense where the weakness is, not necessarily what we say he needs to do by coverage. And in a nutshell, we're going to provide them with a lot more freedom. And what people don't understand is that actually takes a lot more discipline.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
it takes more discipline to be out on the tarmac at 5 o'clock in the morning to go on an 8-mile run because you don't want to go to the stockade, or does it take more discipline for us to say, hey, we'll see you at 5 a.m. to go run 8 miles. You're on your own. We'll trust you to be there. And that's not I have tremendous respect for the military and the police force in our country. That's not a shot at them at all. They have to have it done and have it done now, and that's why they do what they do. But I think it takes more discipline for an individual when you entrust him to get up at 5 and be there on his own than it does to just threaten him with something that he's afraid of so that he has to be there. So and my whole point is, when we give them flexibility and we give them the opportunity to make some really important decisions out on the field when they're playing, you've got to do a good job coaching and preparing them, and you've got to trust them to make the right decisions. Otherwise, it can cost you a ball game.
Yeah.
And so, that's where our philosophy lies. That's our culture. And then, on the other end of it, on the bigger picture, Mac Brown led Texas for, I think, 17 or 18 seasons successfully. And he won over the long haul. His blueprint is a design that helps you win consistently over the long haul. So it's been a lot of fun from a student standpoint on my end to watch and learn how he does things to develop a program for long-term successful stability, as opposed to trying to win in a year or two so we can go get another bigger job.
Right.
He's building right now to win for years to come, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of that.
I'm wondering if there's a way that you can kind of, show us a bit as far as what that offense looks like for you at North Carolina. What are you guys running as far as an offense? Because there's a lot of different offenses out there. Is there a specific offense that has worked well for you to run?
Well, really, in a nutshell, without even the board, I mean, we have a To give you an example, we'll teach our players 3 formations. We'll teach them 4 tags, which are formation adjustments. We'll teach them 2 motions. And, we'll teach them a few back sets or areas that we can move the running back in a formation.
Okay.
So what's happening is there's a total of maybe 16 different things that a quarterback has to learn, because he's got to know every position. But for the receivers, they just have to know the 3 formations, the 4 adjustments, and the motion that applies to their formation. So maybe a receiver's got to know 7 or 8 different things. A running back has to know his back sets, and then the outside of the plays that they run. We're just talking about how we line up. He's only got 4 or 5 things to know, and that's it. So we're minimizing what they have to learn. But when you put all those parts together, we could line up in over 1,000 different formational looks in a season. Most teams are going to get anywhere between 800 and 1,200 plays in a football season. So theoretically, we could line up in a different look every single time we snap the football without ever really having to ask any of our skill kids to know more than 8 or 10 things.
That's smart.
And that's what we want. We want to be simple there so that we can present a multiple pick. Now, it's not our desire to be in a different look in all 1,000 plays, but we have the capability if we wanted to. That's not necessarily the goal, but the capability is there, and it doesn't stress our guys from a mental standpoint. And we take the same approach with the plays and the way we attack defenses. So I'm not trying to escape drawing something for you, but that in a nutshell is the approach to teaching the offense. And then once the offense is done, we install it in 4 days. So in 4 days, and we don't install it evenly in 4 days. You've got an entire month to move into spring ball before you have practice on day 1. So the most difficult stuff goes into the first practice, because then we can say to our players, look, you just learned and executed today the most difficult stuff. Everything from here on in will get easier, and there won't be as much install. So 50% of the offense might go into day 1, right? 25 might go into day 2, 15 in day 3, 10 in day 4. And that way you're teaching less, you're teaching the easier stuff. And day 1, where we had the most massive install, they've had an entire month mentally to prepare for it. It's no different than going to calculus class at 8 in the morning. When are you the most attentive? You're the most attentive at 8 a.m.
Right.
Now, math is cumulative, so you've got to learn the basics before you can do the more progressive stuff. Football is football. And so they don't need to know how to run inside zone to be able to throw 4 verticals. Every single play is exclusive. And so we're going to teach them the most difficult stuff early. We're going to teach them the most stuff early, because that's when they're hungriest to learn it all. That's when they're in the best physical shape. It's before they get beat up and dinged up and exhausted. And, at the end of that calculus class, all you're doing is looking at the clock, you want out. So we don't want to be teaching them the same amount of stuff or the most difficult stuff at the end of the 4-day install, because we don't have the same attention span, and we don't have the same healthy group that we did on day 1. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it works for us.
No, that's great planning. That's great planning. And I tell you, that's the thing. Is there something to be said about time of possession from an offensive standpoint? Because as offenses out, they put points up, they put yards up. Yes, and there's this thing said, hey, the quicker I can score, the quicker I can get more yards, but I leave my defense out there on the field longer. What's to be said about that whole time of possession thing versus what your defense, do you have to have like a hockey team on defense where you're sliding more people in on defense so they're ready fresh and they're really ready and fresh? I mean, what's that thought from you on that?
I would say 2 things. I think one, it's a lot like politics. I think, if the defense is paying the statistical analysis company to evaluate time of possession, they're going to tell you that if the offense holds the ball, you have a better chance of winning. If the offense is paying that statistical study company to give you an evaluation of time of possession, they're going to tell you that more plays equals more points, and more points statistically will tell you you're going to win more games. And so it really just depends on what pair of glasses do you want to look through to evaluate it. There's a lot of different ways to win games. Time of possession doesn't mean anything at some places, and they win. Time of possession means everything at other places, and they win doing it that way. I think the two most important things are, and I'm very appreciative of having guys like Mac Brown and a defensive coordinator in Jay Bateman that that we're able to sit down and say, how do we attack a football team, and how do we build this thing under Mac's leadership, where we all understand what we're doing on offense, we all understand what we're doing on defense, we know what the ramifications are, both positively and negatively, and this is how we're going to manage the game. And when you do that and everybody's on the same page, you have a much better shot at winning that way, regardless of what the approach is. If you're all doing the same thing and working in the same direction and for the same goal, it works better. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, Coach Bateman said it to me one time when we were meeting. He said, time of possession and getting the defense off the field is our responsibility on defense, not yours on offense. He said, whether we go out there a minute and a half later or 5.5 minutes later, it's still within our power to force a 3 and out and get ourselves off the field. And I agree. It was nice to hear a defensive guy say that.
Right.
I also agree, though, on the offensive end, it's much more helpful to Jay and the defense and to our program as a whole if when we come off of a drive that only took a minute and a half, there's another 7 points on the scoreboard. It's a lot easier to go right back out on the field on defense with another 7 points at your back. It's very hard to play good defense if you're in a no huddle up tempo system and you don't prioritize time of possession, but you lead the country in 3 and outs. You're not going to win doing that either. And so I think when everybody's on the same page, and we are in North Carolina, it gives you the best opportunity to win a football game.
I appreciate you explaining a lot of the X's and O's, because again, that's part of football. And I think your players understanding how to set up your players the best way possible in being successful, the best way possible in adding some more W's to the schedule and some wins. Just what this has meant for, Carolina Blue. And you look at all sports aspects from North Carolina, the football program is making their impact of who they are, when really it's been, North Carolina basketball from a standpoint of that. But what has that marketing or that thing from that standpoint been for your program?
I would say that when I first got to North Carolina, one of the administrators, somebody had said to me, the University of North Carolina is the 7th most recognizable university name in the world. And, I don't know if we're 7th there or not. If we're quoting that statistic, then it's probably somewhere around there. And even if we were to make it a more vague statement, University of North Carolina is one of the most recognized university names in the world and in our country today. I mean, that alone helps recruiting. It helps no matter where we go to address a recruit. They're aware of the Tar Heels. They're aware of our colors. They're aware of Chapel Hill. They're aware of where we're located. And truth be told, a lot of that, I'm sure, is the fact that Michael Jordan played basketball at the University of North Carolina. A lot of that is, I'm sure, is the massive amount of success that the basketball program has had at the University of North Carolina. So those two things, and then obviously the other marquee sport in North Carolina is the football program. And so when those two programs are winning, as many have said in the past, and just stealing their cliche or their comment, but athletics is the front porch of the university. It's the first thing you see, whether you think it's the most important thing or not. You're going to see us playing football or basketball or representing the Tar Heels in athletics somewhere on TV long before you're going to hear about, an academic program. And I'm not saying one is more important than the other, but if we're winning, we're giving you a great initial view of our school. And then it's easier maybe to say to you, hey, you know what, our business program is one of the most, successful in the world.
Exactly.
Then we can expose you to some other things.
Mm.
But obviously Michael Jordan and the shoes and the brand, Air Jordan, all of that is a huge part of what we do athletically. And every university has something that's unique to them, and that just happens to be what we have.
Well, I tell you, Coach, I appreciate very much having you on our program on Outside the Games. It's been some time. I think we got into contact with each other when you were at Ole Miss, and then, seeing you coach at as a offensive coordinator, QB coach, and working with Mac Brown and a lot of different, your defensive coordinator, a lot of the staff. And I think the most enjoyable thing has got to be to watch your players grow, not only as young men, but also as football players as well, and academically speaking as well. So isn't that something just that you really look back and you can reflect year after year? You don't get a lot of time, unlike COVID-19 now that we're dealing with, but usually it's like turn the page, we got to go to the next season. But there is a time when you as coaches look at that as something to be proud of.
With Mac Brown, it's extremely important. With a number of coaches I've had the pleasure of working for, player development, not just on the field, but off the field, has been important. I think it gets more attention and more of an emphasis some places as opposed to some others. It is a huge priority in North Carolina. And I think, one of the things that I really enjoy most about our staff is the amount of time, effort, and really just caring that they put into the players that they have in their room. And one thing that's really interesting there too is the amount of relationships that our offensive coaches have with defensive players, and defensive coaches have with offensive players. It's kind of it isn't quite the same as what we have on our side because you're spending more time with them, but there's a lot of relationships that cross the line, O&D, both between our players and our staff. And I think that's just a sign of a really good team unity. And so that exists right now. And if we can maintain that, we all want to win football games. There's no doubt about that. But doing it with players that you have a tremendous amount of respect for. I'm a fan of a lot of our players. I love watching Chaz Surratt on defense play football. I love watching Tamari Fox play football. I love watching Gimmel run around at linebacker and play football. And those are just a few of the defensive guys that I respect tremendously. So when you have that kind of atmosphere, you have some of the building blocks you need to build a championship program, and I think that's where we're headed.
Well, Coach Phil Longo here, offensive coordinator, QB coach for University of North Carolina, the Tarheel football program. I tell you, we really look forward to watching you, especially hopefully we get through all this COVID-19 stuff and we can start getting back to some normalcy, but definitely some prayers and stuff go out to a lot of those people that are struggling financially, health-wise, and it's taken a toll on not only us from a anxiety, fear, economic, financial, but it's also taught us a way to communicate a different way and to really value that communication as much as we can get from each other.
Well, I almost feel guilty and maybe a little bit selfish to sit here for a bit of time and talk about our program and football and the things that get me fired up. And then you stop for a minute, take a breath, and you think about all the people out there that are struggling, that are dealing with the virus right now, or have family members or friends that are going through some really, really tough times. And then, as I mentioned earlier, all the people that are, they're dealing with some financial issues right now because of what's going on. I know this, we've got a number of staff members, with Coach Brown setting the example and leading the way, and then a number of our players that are out there doing what they can, whether it be financially or with their time or their commitment some way, somehow, to help some other people. And hopefully we get through this quickly. I hope we're looking back at this as another item on the history timeline while we're preparing on the field for, pregame before game 1 in September. So that's my hope, and obviously our prayers go out to all of those who are dealing with their tough times. And if there's anything that we can do to help those people, we certainly will.
You said it perfectly. Well, hey, this has been Kevin Men with Outside the Games. It's been Coach Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, quarterback coach for North Carolina, the Tar Heel football program.
On behalf of Mac Brown and our whole staff and our whole program, we hope everybody has a great summer. We hope to see you all back in the fall for what should be a great 2020 season. And God bless. Thank you for the invite.
God bless, Coach. Thank you so much for being on our program. Thank you.
Yes, sir.